Napoleon Bonaparte, the little man who changed the world. But is everything you've heard about him true? Let's find out. Today we're diving into Napoleon's life, from his amazing victories to some of the most surprising facts about him. He was an emperor, a military genius, and one of the most controversial figures in history. We'll separate the man from the myth, exploring his incredible journey from a small island to the pinnacle of power, and tackle those persistent rumors, like his supposed height. Was he really that short? Stick around because the answer will surprise you. We've got a lot to cover in just 10 minutes, so let's jump right in. Our story begins on the island of Corsica, where Napoleon Bonaparte was born in 1769. His family was part of the local nobility, but they weren't particularly wealthy. From a young age, Napoleon showed an incredible aptitude for learning. He was sent to military school in France, where he excelled. As a young man, Napoleon was considered quiet and studious, obsessed with military history. He'd spend hours poring over books about great commanders like Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, soaking up their strategies. This wasn't just a hobby. It was his passion, and it laid the foundation for his future success. When the French Revolution erupted, it created chaos, but also opportunity. The old social order was crumbling, and talent, not just birthright, could now lead to advancement. Napoleon seized his chance. In 1793, at the Siege of Toulon, his brilliant artillery tactics helped recapture the city from Royalist and British forces. This victory got him noticed by the revolutionary leaders, and he was promoted to brigadier general at just 24 years old. His rise was meteoric. He was ambitious, ruthless, and incredibly skilled on the battlefield. His ability to inspire his troops was legendary. They would follow him anywhere, believing he was destined for greatness. And he was just getting started. Now, let's talk about some of his most famous victories. Napoleon's military campaigns are studied to this day for their strategic brilliance. One of his early masterpieces was the Italian campaign of 1796. He took command of a poorly supplied and demoralized French army and led them to a series of stunning victories against the Austrians. He used speed, surprise, and deception to outmaneuver much larger forces. But perhaps his most famous victory was the Battle of Austerlitz in 1805, often called the Battle of the Three Emperors. Napoleon's Grande Armée faced a combined Russian and Austrian force that outnumbered them. Instead of playing it safe, Napoleon set a brilliant trap. He deliberately weakened his right flank to lure the Allies into attacking, then launched a massive, decisive counterattack on their center, splitting their army in two. It was a tactical masterpiece that cemented his reputation as an unbeatable military genius and secured his control over much of Europe. After these incredible successes, Napoleon's power in France was absolute. In 1804, he crowned himself Emperor of the French, a moment famously captured in a massive painting by Jacques-Louis David. As emperor, he wasn't just a military leader, he was a reformer. He introduced the Napoleonic Code, a comprehensive legal system that became the foundation for modern civil law in France and many other countries. It promoted principles like legal equality, religious tolerance, and the abolition of feudalism. He also reformed the education system, creating a more standardized and accessible structure. He was building an empire, not just through conquest, but through administration and law, leaving a lasting impact that we can still see today. But what about the myths? Let's start with the most famous one, his height. Was Napoleon really a tiny tyrant? The short answer is no. The idea that he was exceptionally short is largely a product of British propaganda. During his lifetime, British cartoonists loved to portray him as a comically small and angry figure, little bony, to diminish his stature in the public eye. So, how tall was he really? Historical records suggest he was about 5 feet 6 or 5 feet 7 inches in the modern English system. At the time, that was actually average, or even slightly above average height for a Frenchman. The confusion also comes from the difference between the French inch and the English inch. The French inch was slightly longer, so his height recorded in French units appeared smaller when directly converted without adjusting for the difference. So, the myth of the little corporal is just that, a myth. Another interesting detail? Napoleon was terrified of cats. It's a surprising phobia for a man who commanded vast armies and faced down empires. While there's no definitive proof from his own writings, the story has persisted for centuries. He was also a workaholic, known for sleeping only a few hours a night and being able to dictate letters to multiple secretaries on different subjects all at once. His mind was always working, always planning the next move. Of course, no empire lasts forever. Napoleon's downfall was as dramatic as his rise. The turning point was his disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. He led a massive army, the Grande Armée, deep into Russia, but the Russians refused to engage in a decisive battle. Instead, they retreated, burning everything in their path, a tactic known as scorched earth. By the time Napoleon reached Moscow, he found a deserted and burning city. With no supplies and the brutal Russian winter setting in, the retreat was a catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of his soldiers died from starvation, freezing temperatures, and relentless Russian attacks. This catastrophic failure shattered the myth of Napoleon's invincibility. His enemies, including Britain, Prussia, Austria, and Russia, formed a powerful coalition against him. In 1814, they captured Paris, and Napoleon was forced to abdicate. He was exiled to the small island of Elba in the Mediterranean. But you can't keep a man like Napoleon down for long. Less than a year later, in what's known as the 100 Days, Napoleon escaped from Elba, landed in France, and rallied the people and the army to his side. He marched to Paris and reclaimed his title as emperor without a single shot being fired. The European powers were stunned and quickly assembled their armies to confront him once and for all. This leads us to the legendary Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Napoleon faced a combined army of British and Prussian forces led by the Duke of Wellington and Gebhard von Blücher. It was a close and brutal battle. For a while, it seemed like Napoleon might pull off another miraculous victory. But in the end, the timely arrival of the Prussian forces turned the tide. Napoleon's army was defeated. This time, there would be no second chances. He was exiled to the remote and windswept island of St. Helena in the middle of the South Atlantic Ocean, thousands of miles from Europe. He spent the last 6 years of his life there, under constant British guard, dictating his memoirs and reflecting on his incredible life. He died in 1821 at the age of 51. The cause of his death is still debated by historians, with some suggesting stomach cancer and others pointing to arsenic poisoning. So, what is Napoleon's legacy? It's incredibly complex. On one hand, he was a ruthless dictator, whose wars caused the deaths of millions across Europe. He was driven by personal ambition and a thirst for power. But on the other hand, he was a brilliant reformer who modernized France and spread revolutionary ideas like equality before the law, meritocracy, and religious freedom across the continent. The Napoleonic Code, as we mentioned, is still influential today. He dismantled old feudal structures and inadvertently fueled the rise of nationalism in Germany and Italy. Love him or hate him, you can't deny his impact. He was a force of nature who reshaped the map of Europe and left a legacy that continues to be debated and studied over 200 years later. From a boy on a small island to the master of a continent, his life is a testament to what one person's ambition and genius can achieve, for better or for worse. And that's the whirlwind story of Napoleon Bonaparte in just under 10 minutes. We've covered his rise, his greatest triumphs, busted a few myths, and followed his dramatic downfall. It's a life so epic it almost feels like fiction. What do you think is his most important legacy? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into fascinating historical figures. See you in the next video.